Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today on the channel, let's talk about some overlooked 60s folk rock albums. I'm going to start off here with an album from 1965. It was produced by Paul Simon, recorded in England. The album is the only thing produced by this guy in his lifetime. I'm talking about Jackson C. Frank. A stellar album, 10 perfectly written tracks. Little backstory on Jackson C. Frank. Very tragic life. At 11 years old, in his school, there was a fire. 15 fellow students lost their life in this fire. Jackson C. Frank survived with 50% burns across his body. And that is just one of many, many tragic turns in this guy's life. But he was able to produce this gorgeous record. First off, I mean, you could just tell from the first track, Blues Run the Game. He's an exceptional songwriter and finger picker. He has really very unique picking style, kind of like James Taylor did on those early albums. And so Paul Simon recorded this. It didn't go anywhere. And then his life just kind of, he pretty much fell into depression, became schizophrenic, and was living on the streets. And I mean, the story can just go on. Look his story up online and just read it. It's one of the most tragic stories of all time. But this album here has really grown in legend over the decades, kind of like Nick Drake and Judy Sill, you know, those artists where nothing happened in their lifetime, but all of a sudden they're discovered, you know, decades afterwards. So same thing with Jackson C. Frank. His songs have been covered by numerous artists, Counting Crows, Robin Pecknold of Fleet Foxes, Sandy Denny, who he reportedly dated for a short while in the 60s, Bert Jansch, John Redbourne, and the list goes on and on. Even Nick Drake covered him. So this is a CD release from the early 2000s, 2001, I believe, has the full album, the 10 songs, and there's 5 bonus tracks that are really good as well. This is one of those albums, too, that it starts off really good, and it keeps going good, and it gets better and better. By the 7th track or the 8th track, the last 3 tracks end on just such a high note. As far as songwriting and melody and finger picking, these tracks, I Want to Be Alone, Just Like Anything, and You Never Wanted Me, are incredible tracks. The whole album is fantastic. If you've never heard Jackson C. Frank, definitely pull it up. I'm sure if you're a fan of folk or folk rock, you'd love it from the first strum of the guitar on the first track. So a classic, Jackson C. Frank from 1965, produced by Paul Simon. Another fine album from 1967 is the debut from the Youngbloods. We just lost Jesse Colin Young this year, earlier in the year. What a talent Jesse Colin Young was. I mean, what a beautiful voice, great songwriter, really true to his craft. Albums like the Youngbloods' Elephant Mountain are just near classics. His solo albums like Song for Julie are amazing. This is where it all starts for Jesse Colin Young. The song Get Together was originally written and put on this album, but never went anywhere. It was released in '67, and then 2 years later, re-released, became a huge hit. Get Together. Other fantastic tracks on here, Grizzly Bear. So they have this kind of combination of kind of Love and Spoonful playfulness, and there's kind of some raw R&B thrown in there and some just beautiful ballads. Grizzly Bear is kind of that raw sound, and you've got a guitarist whose name is Banana. He kind of goes back and forth between electric guitar, and he pulls off some fine leads throughout the Youngbloods' career. Plus, he also plays this really cool, it's not an organ, it's electric piano, which really adds a lot of depth to their sound. On this particular album, they have 4 members. They eventually turned into a 3-member band from Elephant Mountain onward. But this is a fine album. One of Jesse Colin Young's first tracks there on the album, Tears Are Falling, is a gorgeous track. Really shows where Jesse Colin Young would go as a songwriter. They do cover songs like CC Rider, Ain't That Lovin' You Baby. But probably the highlights, I would say, were Grizzly Bear, Get Together, Tears Are Falling, 4 in the Morning, and Foolin' Around is a beautiful track too as well. So the first Youngbloods album released on RCA in 1967 didn't really go anywhere. As I said before, Get Together would be a huge hit 2 years later, re-released from this album. Speaking of Paul Simon, how about the very first official Paul Simon solo album, Paul Simon's Songbook? This was recorded around the same time as that Jackson C. Frank album, while Paul Simon was playing some gigs in Britain, some small clubs, and a lot of these tracks would end up on the second, or is it the third? One, two, three. Maybe I think it's the second Simon and Garfunkel album. Sounds of Silence. Songs like I Am a Rock, Leaves That Are Green, April Comes She Will. Of course, The Sounds of Silence is on here, Kathy's song. So kind of like almost not demo quality, but almost like kind of like a little bit of raw form Paul Simon before that album came out, The Sounds of Silence. All these are just Paul Simon with acoustic for the most part. Patterns is on here. The Side of a Hill, He Was My Brother, A Most Peculiar Man. A lot of these songs on the early Simon and Garfunkel albums. So really, really cool album. A lot of people don't remember it. It wasn't released initially here in the US, only released in the UK, and then eventually released years down the line in the United States. So a really great listen. I just love Paul Simon's work with Garfunkel, and as a solo artist, he's just one of the all-time greats. So if you want to catch Paul Simon here early on, just as a kind of a solo performer without Garfunkel, this is the album for you. Paul Simon's Songbook from 1965. Really good stuff. How about a little folk pop? The first album, the debut from diva, the diva of all divas, Cher. All I Really Want to Do. This is a really fun album. There's really something really, I don't know, engaging about this album, and a really, I don't know, kind of just, it's Cher, right? Cher just kind of turns things into like a kind of a fun time, right? So All I Really Want to Do, the Byrds cover, the Dylan song, really, really, really good version, I think. She also does a version of the Ray Davies pen track, I Go to Sleep, which was never released on any Kinks album. There's a demo version of it from like 64, 65 that Ray did, but great version here done by Cher. She does a version of Needles and Pins by the Searchers. The Bells of Rhymney, which the Byrds covered on Mr. Tambourine Man, is on here. So this has a lot of 1965 flavor. What else is on here? She does a version of Blowing in the Wind by Dylan. I mean, not a 5-star album, but a very pleasant listen. And it really takes you back to a certain time when the folk rock boom was happening here in the States. So fine debut from Cher. All I Really Want to Do from 65. Another great one from Gene Clark, his debut. This was reissued as Echoes. This was released in 1967. It was originally called Gene Clark with the Gosden Brothers. So what you got is that complete album on here with the Gosden Brothers. Plus you have like 4 or 5 tracks from the Byrds Pre-Flight album from 64 before they signed with Columbia. So that's kind of cool. Songs like Boston, For Me Again, an early version of I Knew I'd Want You, which would later appear on Mr. Tambourine Man. Set You Free This Time, which was on Turn, Turn, Turn. But then you have the whole album with the Gosden Brothers, songs like Echoes, Tried So Hard. This is a really, really fine album from Gene Clark. Didn't go anywhere. It was released around the same time as Younger Than Yesterday in early 67. And there's a couple of bonus tracks on here as well. 20 tracks. This was released on the Legacy Columbia label in 1991. I think Sundays, that reissue label, Sundays, released this as the original album a while back. So it may still be available, but you could probably find a cheap version of this in the 99-cent bin or $2.99 bin. Great, great album here. The debut from Gene Clark called Echoes, also known as Gene Clark with the Gosden Brothers. I love this album. I love this band. And this album went nowhere, even though there was a couple of minor hits on it. It's the 4th album by the Lovin' Spoonful, Everything Playing. This is the last album with John Sebastian. This is the first album that Zal Yanofsky was not on. He later quit or was fired. And the first album Jerry Yester was on. I think the only Lovin' Spoonful album that he was on. A lot of people don't really think highly of this album. I do not know why. I think this has some of the greatest John Sebastian tracks ever in his discography with Lovin' Spoonful or solo. First off, Younger Generation, incredible track. He played that at Woodstock. You have 2 minor hits on here. She Is Still a Mystery to Me, or She Is Still a Mystery. That really cool orchestration, just a perfect pop song. Another one called 6 O'Clock, which starts the album. Then you've got these really cool like John Sebastian ballads like Boredom, Really great. Another one called Money. And then a song sung by drummer Joe Butler called Old Folks, strangely moving track. This is the only stinker track on here, I would say, is Priscilla Millionera, which is horribly sung by Jerry Esther. But the rest of the album is just really, really a good way to go out. They would last one more album with Joe Butler. He was the only sole surviving member as far as like putting out a Love and Spoonful album under that name. There would be another album after this called, I think, called Revolution 69. Not that great, but not horrible. But this is the last official Spoonful album with the quartet, and I think it's fantastic. It's overlooked. I think all four of their studio albums are fantastic mid-60s folk rock albums. They're mainly known as a top 10 kind of pop band, but their album cuts are absolutely stellar across those first four albums, and this is no exception. Everything playing from the Love and Spoonful from 1967. I've mentioned this guy so many times on the channel, but I'm just trying to influence you guys to get into him. So I'm going to say it again. Tim Harden's first album, his debut, Tim Harden 1. This is what you call a perfect album under 30 minutes. I think it's like 26 minutes long or something like that. You got the original version of Reason to Believe, which Rod Stewart covered, made a huge success out of. You got all of these amazing songs like Don't Make Promises, Hey, How Can We Hang On to a Dream, Misty Roses. There's just nobody that writes or sounds like Tim Harden. He had his own thing happening. I highly recommend this one, Tim Harden 2. Those are just musts if you're into folk and folk rock music from the mid-60s. A real talent. Another tragic story here, Tim Harden. He had addiction for years, and it took him, unfortunately. So still have the music. It's fantastic. Tim Harden 1, another overlooked album from '66. And then last but not least, when you think about their discography and the impact they had, no one really talks too much about the first Jefferson Airplane album, Takes Off. Completely different sound, but there were elements of the sound that would appear on Surrealistic Pillow. Here you've got, now I'm going to try to pronounce this right. Is it Signe or Signa Anderson? I don't know. I've heard it pronounced several different ways, but she was the original lead singer on this album only, and then Grace Slick took over after Surrealistic Pillow, but she does a fine job here. We have Skip Spence, the guitarist for Moby Grape, playing drums on here, on this one and only album as well. So a different little lineup going on. But they also do a version of Get Together called Let's Get Together. It's on this. Some of the greatest tracks on here, though. It's No Secret by Marty Balin. Fantastic. Let Me In. Blues from an Airplane. Come Up the Years. Chauffeur Blues. I mean, it's not like a 5-star like Surrealistic Pillow and some of the other greats like Crown of Creation and After Bathing at Baxter's, but my God, this is a great album that no one really talks about. And it really shows the early formation of Jefferson Airplane and how they would progress from album to album. So another just fantastic album, overlooked in my opinion. Jefferson Airplane, Takes Off from '66. Let me know if you have any more to enter into the comments section. As always, thank you for watching. If you dig the content across the channel, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.